All right, thank you so much. It is 1:33. I would like to call to order to the December 7th, 2022 Citizen Advisory Committee meeting. Who would like to lead the Pledge of Allegiance for today? All right, Richard.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to acknowledge that today is the Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day as well. On to roll call. Staff, please call the roll so we can establish a quorum.
At this time, I'm only asking those CAC members attending in person to respond by saying "here" when I call your name. I do want to remind you to unmute your microphones by pushing the button at the base prior to responding. And due to a limited number of microphones, please note you are sharing with your table mate. Ryan Rossi,
Here.
James Garvin,
Here.
Mark Bruner,
Here.
Ramona Bean. Here. Paula Ryan,
Here.
Jim Knight,
Here.
James Bonfiglio,
Here.
Richard Vasilati,
Here.
Marissa Doss, Sammy Brown,
Here.
Mark Forrest. BJ Mishra did email me to let me know he's running late, so he's absent at this time. Paco Gill.
Here.
Myron Uman.
Here.
Carrie Brown did request permission to join us virtually, so we'll add him in a moment. Greg Fagan. Aquanette Tyson Thomas.
Here.
The municipalities of Boynton Beach, Belle Glade, Jupiter, and Lake Worth Beach are all vacant, so they will be marked as absent today. Albert Richwagon.
Here.
Wendang.
Here.
We do have a quorum, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you so much. Are there any modifications to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, the following member has requested CAC permission to participate remotely. Terry Brown has requested due to a disability that makes in-person attendance difficult.
To all the CAC members, are there any objections allowing these members or Terry to participate remotely? Okay, seeing none. Terry, you are approved to participate remotely.
Excuse me, I just have more of a point of order on the agenda. I'm assuming we're going to discuss and vote on action items 2A, B, and C separately, because I will need to recuse myself from item 2C. My property is one of the properties that is subject to, I think it's the first table in the projects for us.
Thank you. That's noted, and we can return back to that when we get to item 2C.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
And Madam Chair, I'm sorry, Marissa Doss has joined the meeting. Just let the record show.
Oh, great, thank you. All right, we're moving to item 1D, which is the motion to approve minutes for October 4th. Are there any changes to the minutes at this time? Seeing none, I'd like to have a motion to adopt the meeting minutes as presented.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Tammy and second by James. Any discussions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. All right, motion carries. Item 1E, general public comments at this time. Instructions on how to provide public comments are included in the agenda. Are there any general comments received?
There are none at this time, Madam Chair.
And then moving on to 1F, comments from the chair and members' comments. At this time, I'd like to invite CAC members' comments on items that are not already on the agenda. For those who who are participating remotely, please utilize the raise hand feature in the Zoom platform and remember to mute your microphone once recognized. At this time, I'm going to go right to left. Myron.
Thank you. I have two comments. The first is, I'm bewildered about why the TPA has not been able to provide handicap parking for anyone who needs to come to the TPA for handicap purposes. Terry is unable to attend. I think it's unconscionable that we've not been able to solve that problem. And my other comment is that 6 or 7 months ago, I brought to the committee an article from Science Magazine about studies of the traffic signs in Texas that were causing accidents. And I just wanted to note that last week, the New Jersey Department of Transportation was directed by the Federal Department of Transportation to take down its funny signs. So research is finally having an impact. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Are there any other member comments at this time? I'd like to acknowledge that we have a new member. Welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself to us?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Aquanette Tyson Thomas, and I represent the city of Green Acres. I work for Valley Bank as a business development officer in our community lending division. So happy to be here with you all today.
Hi. Great. I'm sorry.
Welcome, right?
Yeah, welcome. Happy holidays. I do have two comments to make. One is I live in Boca, but I actually work in Delray. Albert and I did a walk and bike audit earlier last month. And, we are thinking about ways to improve safety and mobility within Delray Beach itself. And, at one point, once our data are the data collection, and as we're helping the city, we'd like to present some information to the board of all the work that we've been doing and all the surveys that we've been collecting. The other thing that I like to announce is this morning, the city of West Palm Beach had kicked off their 12 days of railway safety campaign. A play on 12 days of Christmas, 12 ways of be alert and be conscious, especially around our railway corridor within, just in an urban settings along the FEC and the SFRC. I have brought holiday postcards for everybody, for any of those who are interested. Our own executive leader, Valerie, was a speaker at this morning press conference. And of course, these are holiday cards in English and Spanish. I'm happy to leave some in the front if anybody'd like to share some of the, positive messaging around railway safety to your friends and family. And that is all the comments I have this morning. Okay, so we can move on to the CAC liaison report at this time. Jason, can you provide us with an update?
Yes. So the first is we have some new staff members. So I'd like to welcome Nathan George, our LRTP coordinator. He's here in the audience, as well as Clive Burt. He's our staff accountant. Both recent additions to the staff here at the TPA. So we're happy to have them, and please welcome them when you see them. And the next item, we also have a new website. So we've revamped our website. It's very accessible now. It's easy to use, and we encourage everybody to go there, check it out, use it, and then provide any feedback if you see anything that could be further improved, or if something's missing, a link of what it's a brand new website, so we're always looking to improve it or work out any kinks since it's brand new. So it's the first version. Next is we'd like to congratulate the city of Boca Raton for adopting their Vision Zero resolution on October 25th. And you can find more information on our website at palmbeachtpa.org/safety. There's a couple of other things. There's a Love to Ride challenge. We want to congratulate all that participated, and our particular staff rode a ton of miles, 898 miles for a staff of 14. And we went, and there's 136 rides. And we finished first as an agency for our size, and our size was like one of the smaller sizes, 1 to 15 or 5 to 15 staff members. So we did really well. I mean, we finished first, but we're always pretty competitive. We like to get out to ride. We encourage getting out and riding for everyone else, but we do it ourselves too. So we're always a role model for other organizations. Also, there's the new Brightline Boca Raton station, the long-awaited new Brightline station that's looking to open this month, and they are offering a station tour on January 27th, and you can RSVP using our website. Another reason to go to our new website, it's palmbeachtpa.org/tour Brightline. And the next couple items, there's Mothers Against Drunk Driving holiday campaign. So this is to create a transportation plan for celebrations involving alcohol. So there's a hashtag #TieOneOn for safety, and you can find out more information about Mothers Against Drunk Driving holiday campaign at mad.org/South Florida. Next is our Road to Zero Community Traffic Safety Grant. The deadline to apply is January 16th, and there's a website on the screen here. It's a bit long, so I won't read it all out, but you can visit our liaison report, and we'll have the link there, or the liaison report presentation. There should be a link there as well. So our TPA grant pre-application meetings, we kicked off in November with a workshop, and now the grant cycle is open. We have 3 different grants: local initiatives, transportation alternatives, and state road modifications. And one of the application requirements is to schedule a pre-application meeting, and we have dates on our calendar. When you go to the TPA.org website, you can go to funding under what we do and go to funding, and then you'll see the 3 different grants, and then you can find where you could select one of the dates for either scheduling a pre-application meeting either virtually or in person. Next, FDOT federal grant information session. This is for District 4, and their meeting is on February 16th in Fort Lauderdale, and this is to get to know more about the FDOT federal grants. And you can go to fdot.gov/planning policy federal grants. Bicycle friendly communities. There are also applications are being offered through the League of American Bicyclists, and it's open through January 15th. And you can also find out more information at bikeleague.org/community. And the last one is the Safe Street Summit. So each year there's a Safe Street Summit, and it's kind of a collaborative effort between the 3 MPOs in our region, either Miami-Dade, Broward County, or Palm Beach County. And all three MPOs share hosting it. And this year is going to be with the Broward MPO, and the Safe Street Summit is going to be held on February 2nd to 3rd in Hollywood, Florida. And we encourage all of you to participate, register, and attend the event. You can register and nominate Complete Streets champions as well if you can attend, or if you would like to attend, at safestreetsummit.org. And as always, if you're interested in attending, you can reach out to us and we can facilitate registering you so you can attend. And that concludes the liaison report.
Right, thank you so much. Are there any public comments on this item?
Not at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay, are there any committees? Oh, Jim.
Just a quick curiosity. I know they've been talking about getting the station open. Any closer? Because I'm coming from Boca all the time. Have they announced anything closer on the date? I saw in the paper today that it's going to happen this month, but we don't have a firm date or anything yet, or haven't heard anything more than that.
Yeah, the information that I have here says it's to open this month, so they must be just putting the finishing touches on it, and I would say by January if they're gonna do tours, but I don't know of a very firm date of exactly when. Unless Valerie would make.
I
me know.
believe Valerie has a better update for us.
Good
She's making her
afternoon,
way
Valerie
up.
Nielsen. They don't want to announce the exact date, but we should be looking at 2 weeks from now. So not next week, but the following week. But they don't want to officially say the exact date, but that's the word on that we've heard. So almost there.
Almost there. You catch the train to see Santa. So moving on to action items, the motion to elect officers for this upcoming calendar year. In pursuant of section 4.3 of the TPA's operating procedures, the officers shall be elected annually at the last regular scheduled meeting of the calendar year. The newly elected officers shall take office at the first regular scheduled meeting of the following calendar year. Staff, are there any public comments on this item?
Not at this time, Madam Chair.
First, I'd like to open the floor for nominations for the chair, as I am currently the chair of this board. I do wish to continue the role. Are there any other nominations at this time?
I'd like to move forward that the chair stays in place.
Okay, so thank you so much for your support as we're moving forward. What about the vice chair? Do we have to do that at this time also?
Yes, Madam
Okay.
Chair. First, I would ask that we take a vote on your election. But you have a motion by Jim Knight and then a second by Sammy Brown, so we can move into a vote if you'd like.
Okay, all right, we have a motion on the floor to maintain myself, Wending, as the chair of this committee. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. So at this time, I'd like to open the nomination for the vice chair. Albert Richwagon is currently the vice chair of this committee. Are you willing to continue to serve in this capacity? And if there are there any other nominations?
Yes, I wish to continue.
Okay,
I make a motion that we nominate him.
Albert, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion by Paula Ryan and a second by Ryan Rossi. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay, please. All right, motion carries. Congratulations, Albert. All right. This is so intense. It's much better than the last real election. So now we're going to item B, motion to recommend adoption of the Transportation Improvement Plan, amendment number 2 of the TPA's fiscal year 23 to 27 tip. I'd like to invite Jason to present on this item at this time.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So this is an action item and it will require a vote at the end of the presentation and discussion. And what I'll be presenting is amendment number 2 to the Transportation Improvement Program for fiscal year 23 through 27. This particular amendment is at the request of FDOT to add funding and modify the length of 4 different projects. And the reason for some of the this particular amendment for these projects is to add additional funds to cover cost estimate increases due to inflation, as well as some minor length changes for 3 of the 4 projects. So amendments come to you for very specific reasons that trigger amendments, which are alterations to the Transportation Improvement Program. And in this particular case, we see cost increases that are more than 20% and $2 million. And or in these particular cases, there's a change in length by a half mile and 20% of the total length of the project. So those 2 conditions are the ones that are affecting these 4 projects and more an amendment to come before you as an action item. And as always, amendments when they come before you, only the projects in the amendment are the projects that are impacted in the transportation improvement program. So all other projects that are listed in the transportation improvement program are unaffected. And only these ones that I'll present to you today will be impacted by taking action today. So moving to the first project, I-95 at Indian Town Road. For this particular project, the length has changed. It's a little shorter, or it's a little longer, from 1.185 miles to 1.446. And to accommodate this change and the cost increases for cost estimates and inflation, we see that they've added a design phase, a right-of-way phase, and an environmental phase to this particular project, and has also added American Rescue Plan Act funding for about $9,700,000 approximately for construction. So for this particular project, the way it's listed in the tip is, the current tip is listed on the top, and on the bottom, you see what the proposed changes would be with the additional phases for both design, right away, and environmental, and the increase in some of the costs. Both federal funding and local funding have been increased to accommodate the cost increases. The next three projects are resurfacing projects. And so the first one to cover here is State Route 80 from US 27 to east of Glen Glades Road. And for this particular project, they're adding funds and also changing the length. And the length here is changing from 2.6 miles to 2.1 miles, shortening it a little bit. And to accommodate this change and the cost increases or inflation, you see that they've added a design phase to make the alterations, as well as increase the construction costs to 6 million. And that also includes local funds. And we could see that on this next slide, where we see the proposed tip will identify the additional design phase, the additional construction phase with added local funds. And then on the bottom, there's some highlighted numbers for the additional construction costs mentioned. Now, this third project is out in the along Lake Okeechobee. It is the State Route 15 from north of First Street to the Palm Beach County, Martin County line. And this is just to add funds to this particular project. And by adding these funds, they're adding a design phase with some funding assigned to that, and then increasing the construction cost to 4.24 million. And there's also local funds that are part of that construction cost. And the federal funds or the state funds are being added to this project by way of the advanced construction funding from FDOT. And we can see those changes here, where the proposed changes is what is the action being taken today. Above there is the existing tip, is how it's reflected today. And when it goes through and gets formally approved by our board, the proposed tip would take effect. And you can see the top line shows you the design funds, as well as the additional local funds for construction and the advanced construction funds as well at the bottom. Now, our last project here is also the last resurfacing of the three. There's the State Route 7 from north of Southern Boulevard to Okeechobee Boulevard. And here we're adding funds as well as changing the length. And so the length is changing slightly from approximately 2 miles to 1.9 miles. Here we're increasing the construction phase cost to $2.29 million with additional local funds included in that. And as well, just like the last project, there's additional advanced construction funds, and that comes from FDOT. And here again, just to show you, this is these slides are the details of what it looks like in the tip from the top to the bottom. And you can see the itemized line items for each one of those items, where the construction cost is increased with local funds, as well as the advanced construction funds on the bottom. And with that, that concludes the presentation for these particular 4 projects. And I'm looking for a motion to recommend adoption of amendment number 2, and I'll take any questions at this time.
Thank you so much. Are there any public comments on this item?
Not at this time, Madam Chair.
Do we have any? Oh, we do have committee members. I'm going to go from left to right. Ramona and then James.
Thank you, Jason, for the presentation.
Sure.
My question, you gave us all the details and thank you for that. Looking at the Indian Town Road project with the I-95 northbound. I don't know if you can pull that up again. I was looking at the numbers. The funding sources included the America Cares Act, was that?
Yep.
Okay,
Hey,
and
goes back to those
thank you.
slides.
I was trying to figure out if I could.
Yep, American
Okay.
Rescue Plan Act.
American
funding.
Rescue, okay.
And that's from the federal authorization bill, bipartisan infrastructure law.
Right,
So that's exactly where the funds are coming from.
for that, okay, change.
And
How did we
so-
receive that? Like, what was the onus for?
Okay, FDOT receives these funds and then they distribute it amongst projects that are experiencing cost increases due to inflation or just construction cost increases. So you see that all of these funds are programmed for 2023, which is the next fiscal year. So it's moving into construction by next year. And so when we get these type of immediate federal funding sources, which is basically, money that comes directly to the FDOT right away, which is kind of unprecedented. We don't always see additional funding coming from federal governments this
I
quickly.
mean, it's an
and these
impressive
times.
amount. That's why I was just wondering.
Yes, so, with those
okay.
amounts that come to the district and they come to the District 4 and they cover 4 counties and then they distribute it amongst the projects within those 4 counties, including Palm Beach County. And so there was additional funds on there for different sources, but they just prioritize the funds to use the federal money that we get right away. And so that's why it's 9 million. But if you look a little closer, you see that other funding sources and the existing funding sources for construction for district dedicated revenue, DDR and DIH, some of those funding sources will be reduced and then they'll use the federal funding in lieu of that funding. So it's basically just moving state funding out of the project and moving federal funding into the project. And so,
Okay.
and it's a significant amount. It's $9 million.
I appreciate the explanation. And just to piggyback off my own question for the layman person, I may take that exit a lot, taking my kids to an activity. So what's the actual improvement?
Yep.
That we're going to
So-
see as a driver just getting off the
Right.
ramp there?
Yes,
Okay.
there's so this particular project, they're reconstructing and signalizing the I-95 northbound off-ramp. They're lengthening the eastbound Indian Town Road left storage lane. They're also adding an eastbound auxiliary lane on Indian Town Road from the I-95 exit to Island Way, as well as adding a westbound auxiliary lane from Jupiter West Plaza to I-95 southbound off-ramp. So there's a number of different components. There's several auxiliary lanes being added to the project. Sure.
Thank you so much. I know it's basically to make it easier, safer, faster for you to enter and exit that interchange. Yeah. James.
Yeah, auxiliary lanes are basically merged lanes. It's just a fancy way, a bigger word, for no reason.
Jason, just out of clarity, I'm curious, what exactly is entailed in the design fees for a resurfacing project? Because from the layman, it's just like you're putting more asphalt on top of the street. What is there to redesign? So to speak?
Right.
So kind of curious what that, is it more project management based? Like what exactly is that fee?
When I look at the design fit, the design cost, it's fairly insignificant from the total design, from the total project cost. When I see like $30,000 or $20,000, there's usually a corresponding, what I noticed was a corresponding length change. And so they're probably just having to redo the design to some minor degree to where the design has to be altered, have to pay a designer to do it, probably reapprove the plans. Maybe there's some additional legwork. So I think those costs are really just to accommodate the changes.
Yeah, and I can answer, like, even with a resurfacing project, you have to assess your existing pavement markings and your signage to ensure that it meets the current like MUTC standards. So typically there are some minor designs and they're typically signing and pavement markings design that is included. these type of
Right, so
projects.
resurfacing has come around only once in a while. You see ones all the way out to 2027, 2028, and when they get to those resurfacing jobs, which are now coming up, that have probably been on the books for a while, the design markings and all of the marking, all of the markings are probably outdated, so they're bringing everything up to federal standards. And so just as when mentioned, the MUTC has just gone through some updates and revisions. And so, they're just bringing everything up to standard. So that would be inclusive of those design.
No, that makes
fees.
sense. Like I said, just curious, but thank
Cool.
you.
No, thanks.
All right, and we have the other
Yeah,
Jim.
you also have to deal with manholes, manhole covers, grates and rails. See if there's any changes that need to be made when you scrape off the top and you resurface. That would be an engineering and design issue too.
Okay,
So, and it's just from being in Ocean Ridge for a long time.
Yeah.
all right.
All right, are there any other member comments at this time virtually?
Not at this time, Madam Chair.
Perfect. If there's no further comments, I'd like to have a motion for approval of the fiscal year 23 to 27 tip amendment number 2.
I'll make a
So moved.
motion.
Second.
Did we get that?
I have Ramona making the motion and I have Mark Bruner having the second. Is that what you had?
I
Okay.
will have what you have. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
That moved very quick. Thank you so much. At this time, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay, please say nay. Okay, the motion carries. Moving on to the motion to recommend the endorsement of the FDOT fiscal year 24 to 28 draft tentative work program. There are several people that's on this list to present. Who do we have to make this presentation?
Yes, Madam Chair, it will be,
It'll be, yeah.
oh, go ahead, Jason,
It would be myself and Andrew,
Okay,
the Deputy Director for Program Development.
as
and
well
myself.
as the Turnpike staff.
And yes, so there'll be, our presentation will be followed by FDOT presentation and the Turnpike. Or just the Turnpike.
Yep, just the Turnpike. Thank
Okay,
you.
just the Turnpike.
okay, just the turnpike. All right, so either you, thank you, Jason. Start with you.
I'll need to recuse myself.
Oh, Mr. Bonfiglio, thank you so much. You would be able to sit in and listen to the presentation, but in terms of voting, previously we did connect with our legal team, and they've said that as long as the CAC member's property is at least one of 100 other properties along the road segment to be improved or being voted on, any voting conflict of interest would, under state law and ethics commission opinions, be considered too, quote, remote and speculative to require the member to abstain from voting. In short, you have no voting conflict and may vote on the issue. In fact, must vote on the issue.
Like, did I have to do?
Yeah.
So you looked at the number of properties affected up and down, Boynton Beach Boulevard from I-95 east to State Road, and you,
Yes, that is the opinion from our legal counsel.
okay, very good.
Thank
If you
you.
happen to not be in the room, you can't vote on it.
Well, I get that. yes.
Yes. Thank you so much. Jason?
Okay, so this afternoon, as the next presentation, I'll be presenting the TPA's executive summary of the FDOT draft tentative work program. And this is an action item that will require a vote at the end of the presentations and discussion. And to lead off, I just want to remind the group of the Palm Beach TPA's mission, and that is to collaboratively plan, prioritize, and fund the transportation system. And the draft tentative work program is one of the mechanisms to fund the projects that we provide to FDOT as part of funding the transportation system. So in this tip development process, we see the red highlighted part here is the draft tentative work program. So this is where TPA requests changes, additions, and deletions of projects in the draft tentative work program. Prior to this, you saw in July the list of priority projects. That's our TPA grant program and all of the projects that we offer through the grant cycle. when those get approved through the vetting process and they're determined to be eligible for funding, we give those to FDOT and then they prioritize them in our draft tentative work program, which then leads us into the development of our transportation improvement program for the next year, for the next 5 years. And we'll see that in May and June. So that's how it works out in the development of the TIP process and why the draft tentative work program is being presented and what stage we're in the TIP development process. So in Florida state statute, this is a required document to be presented. And it is the document where the TPA and FDOT work collaboratively to develop the list and then provide funding to the maximum extent feasible for the TPA priority projects. And then FDOT will also make a presentation, or the Turnpike in this case as well, to provide, additional information on those projects. And so this is that opportunity to see what's coming in the next 5 years by FDOT and the Turnpike. So just briefly, what we're going to go over today, we're going to go over 3 different programs: state road modifications, local initiatives, and transportation alternatives. Each one of these programs has a total funding amount, and we're looking to maximize those total funding amounts and program those funds into each one of these grant programs. And that's through the list of priority projects. All the TPA priorities are what we want to see funded in this next 5 years. And that's what this draft tentative work program covers. And we're going to start by covering state road modifications, and then that'll be by Andrew Euler, and then I'll come back and do local initiatives and transportation alternatives. So to kick it off, we're going to invite Andrew Euler here to cover state road modifications.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Jason. So I'll be going through the state road modifications, but what I want to mention first is what you saw in the backup is really our summary of just the projects in our list of priority projects, so the ones that the TPA is trying to prioritize. And then you see one table in there about ones that we saw for new products from FDOT. It is a daunting document to go through the entire one, the whole document of the draft tentative work program for the district. There's thousands of products, so we try to do our best to consolidate that down for you all. I'll go slowly through some of these slides as well. And there's a lot of funding codes and a lot of places that a lot of these things stripped around. So, during this conversation, but even after this, we're always open to work with you all one-on-one if you want to learn more about how this process really plays out. So the first one I want to talk about is state road modifications. This is a program where we typically want to see around $100 million on over a 5-year period towards these projects. That's what we speculate as the amount of state funds and federal funds that we should see on state roadways for our priorities. Right now in this draft tentative work program for you today, over the next 5 years, we're seeing around $63 million. The reason for that is we are actually originally looking pretty close to around $100 million of that federal and state funds when we had State Road 7 in an earlier year of the program. Because there's ongoing litigation with that project, and FDOT hasn't set a final production date on that, they had to move that product out into the draft tentative, out of the current year into other years in draft tentative work program. Since it's such a large project with 2 phases or 2 segments, and the cost increases have gone up so substantially because of not only inflation, but changes in the design. And also when you're moving the product out so many years, it really bumped up the total cost of the projects. So they were not able to fit it anywhere within the current earlier years of this draft tentative work program. And they were able to fit it in an outer year in the new 5th year, which is fiscal year 2028. And that is for the section that's from Okeechobee Boulevard to 60th Street. The other section, which is even a larger cost, $87 million in those outer years, that would come in sometime after fiscal year 2028. To make this accommodation, as it being as one of the major TPA priorities that we have in our list of priority projects, FDOT was trying to look for funds in that new 5th year to fund this project. It really had to dive into some of these other funding pots that we have that we try to use towards other initiatives. And in this case, it uses local initiatives funding, which is another pot of money that we try to set aside for local projects. Unfortunately, in this setup, AFDOT was not able to use other state funding sources on the State Road 7 projects. So they used all the money from that other local initiatives program on this project alone. So what you see in the state road modifications for local initiatives is the State Road 7 extension has money towards it. And there's money as well from local initiatives that goes towards two other major initiatives of TPA, State Road 80 lighting, and then the Atlantic Avenue widening. So the two Atlantic Avenue widenings I wanted to provide an update on. Not much change in the schedule. The first section is the western portion of Atlantic Avenue. It's from State Road 7 to Lyons. I'm going to show this on a map in a second here for you all, but this is on schedule for 2024 still. And then the second sections are to the east of that, and that's from Lyons Road to Turnpike. That's a widening as well. That's on schedule for 2027. And then they broke that part up too between Turnpike and Jog. And that's going to be construction is still outside the work program. So not showing any in the next 5 years. To go in a little bit more detail about those two major projects, State Road 7 and Atlantic, here's the section we're talking about for those unfamiliar with the project. On the right there, you'll see the southern section of Oak Tree Boulevard to 60th. And then you'll see the northern section, 60th to North Lake. So the 60th to North Lake section is the one that is now showing in a draft outside the fiscal year 2028 timeframe. And then that southern section is that one that AFDOT was moving till fiscal year 2028. And there's two top lines there, and there's tons of different funding codes in the work program. But we wanted to have you see sort of how it plays out when it gets into the details. There's about $21 million and from surface transportation funds, which we get to our TPA to prioritize, that we use towards local initiatives, and then a new funding source of carbon reduction program. That's also new funds that we get as formal funds to the TPA to distribute. And that's eating up a lot of that money in that outer year of 2028.
Andy, can you take questions?
Sure. We only have a few more slides left, but I can take it now if you'd like to
It was just,
clarify.
these totals are now inconsistent with a long-range transportation plan.
Yeah.
So will there be an amendment to the long-range transportation plan to accommodate these new?
That's a very good question, Myron. I looked at the numbers yesterday and we can verify still, but I looked at numbers yesterday, and what triggers an amendment in the LRTP is a pretty substantial amount. It's $50 million increase, and then a percentage of the total cost. I forgot what that one was. I think it might be 20%, but it has to be both of those. But it's a good question, and I believe we're still within administrative modification level of a LRTP change, but our staff will be looking at that soon. And if it is determined that we need to, then yes, we'll need to come back to you all with an amendment for our long-range transportation plan. And he's referring to our long-range documents, 25 years document that we have for the TPA, and it has to be consistent to a certain level on cost estimates and the scope of the projects between going from the long-range plan into the transportation improvement program. And that's what he's referring to. The next project is Atlantic Avenue. These are multiple projects in the work program. The sections I wanted to show you, again, the western portion of this is a lot of intersection work along with the widening of Atlantic Avenue from State Road 7 to Lyons Road, still on schedule for 2024. Then we have Lyons Road to Turnpike in 2027, and that eastern portion, east of the Turnpike, looking more towards an outer year around fiscal year 2028, 2029. And then other improvements we have, the smaller ones that we wanted to highlight for you all on state roadways that are TPA priorities. You're about to hear today the culmination of our TPA, our corridor study for Oak Tree Boulevard from State Road 7 to US 1. So with those alternatives that you'll see today in the concepts, AFDOT's going to pick up that ball on the next portion of this, and that's going to be a feasibility study based on those alternatives, and that's going to occur right now scheduled for 2025. After that, we have another one that was actually a study for US 27 connector, which is out in the Belglade area. And that's a connector roadway between US 27 and State Road 715. AFDOT's doing that study as well. They're finishing up that study now, and they're going to be able to come back to us most likely beginning next year to meet with staff and to meet with you all and our board about the results of that. But they also have some preliminary product development work out in fiscal year 27 for that. Other just minor updates are slight advancements in designs for a few of our priority products on signals that are maintained by Palm Beach County and Boca. So they advanced because they're short a little bit of money that was able to be advanced by a year. A sidewalk project out in State Road 715 in the Glades as well, advanced a year for a design. And then another project for sidewalks on Congress Ave, Lake Worth Road to Forest Hill Boulevard, which also includes lighting, advanced for design. And my last slide for you before I turn it back over to Jason with our other priorities is just to give you an overview of some of the new products that we're seeing in the work program. So we go through there, we try to find the ones that are major ones that you may care about. First one is a big one by the county. They requested money from the state for the extension of Flavor Pick Road. And that's going to occur in fiscal year 2028. And that's from Lions Road to Hagen Ranch. That's a new road construction. And then there's multiple resurfacing jobs that are coming into the work program on state roadways in 2027. So we work with the local municipalities and local citizens when AFDOT's about to do those products for design. So we'll go with through that with the product managers on the scopes and how we can make them safer and integrate other types of items into those resurfacing jobs that the citizens or local municipalities might want. And then lastly, there's 2 bridge products that have been added to the work program that are new. And that's it. I'm going to turn back over to Jason Price.
Thanks, Andrew, to cover the state road modifications. Now I'll go through the remaining 2 grant programs. The first is local initiatives. There's a 5-year target of about $120 million over the course of the 5 years, which averages about 20 million a year. And what we see programmed in this draft tentative work program is shy of that. It's 68 million in federal funds. And as you heard from state road modifications with the State Route 7 extension project, a lot of the local initiative funds that we had expected in fiscal year 28 to fund the projects that you see on the right from the previous grant cycle was removed, was used to fund State Route 7. And as a consequence, there was no funding available for last year's grant cycle. So you see all of those projects on the right were not funded. The Southwest 18th Street project in Boca, Gardens Parkway and Palm Beach Gardens, electric buses for Palm Tran, bus stops for Palm Tran, Barwick Road and Delray Beach, and speed tables in Indian Trail Improvement District. All of those were not funded. However, we are going to work collaboratively with all of these agencies to see if they would want to be advanced to this particular funding cycle and be in the pool of the current grant cycle with new applications to receive funding or possibly priority over this current grant cycle. But as a consequence of the cost increases and inflation and just the shortage of funds for state routes, for State Route 7 and overall the state road modification program, this is the consequence of that. One project was funded, and that's in construction year is for fiscal 26, and that's purchasing new passenger rail cars for states. For Tri-Rail, the South Florida Regional Transportation Agency. This particular project was selected for funding because it is funding that is flexed over to FTA, and it is also matched with other funding sources. So for the funding that we provide, it's matched exactly to purchase the passenger rail car. So you get pretty much more for your money. It's a 50% match. So it's 2.5 million for the passenger rail car on our end and 2.5 million for the additional funds that they're receiving. And for a total of 5 million. And so that's how that project is able to advance. Now for transportation alternatives, that particular funding is secured through different funding sources, so it's a little more stable. So we are seeing that in the last year's grant cycle, all of the projects were funded. And so the construction is due for fiscal year 26, and they all received construction funding from top to bottom here from various locations throughout the Indian Trail Improvement District, Fairchild Avenue and Palm Beach Gardens, 49th Street in West Palm Beach, and there's various locations throughout Royal Palm Beach for that particular project. And there was a project in the previous couple cycles ago in 2019 grant cycle or 2018 for Okeechobee Boulevard pedestrian improvements in Loxahatchee Grove and Palm Beach County. This was at the request of the local agency in Palm Beach County to remove this particular project. Now, there is a 3-year target of $15 million for this particular program. And we saw that about 10 million was programmed in federal funds. So there's about $5 million in reserve currently for FDOT, and we're going to work proactively with them collaboratively to find locations to where when there's the next round of projects or the current projects that are in the tip, that when they come to get funding and they get bids for those projects, if there's cost overruns or construction cost estimate increases, we'll be able to apply that reserve of 5 million to offset some of those cost increases. In addition to programming or advancing additional TA projects within the TIP document. So the money is still there. We're just working towards finding locations for them collaboratively with FDOT. And with that, that concludes this portion of the presentation. And now I'd like to invite, James Brown is going to come up from the Turnpike, and he's going to do a presentation on Turnpike projects. And then I'll return and we'll go for questions and discussion.
Thank you so much, James. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I am James Brown. I'm the MPO liaison. to
okay.
Turnpike. I'm sorry.
How many slides do you have?
We have about maybe 7.
7-ish. Can we pause? I'm sorry.
Yeah, of
Do you mind
course.
if we pause? Richard, you have,
I was waiting for Jason to finish. I wanted to
Sure.
Go back to the delay of the State Road 7 extension.
Is that the nature of the pause?
yes, it is.
Okay, yes.
Thank you. I am irritated beyond words to see this happening again with the city of West Palm Beach. What is the exact reason now FDOT has delayed us to 2028? Because this is absolutely insane.
So it has no correlation to West Palm Beach.
Well,
It
it
is-
does have correlation to West Palm Beach because
Um,
they're the ones that continue this process.
Okay, I want to answer your question.
Thank you.
So what I'm telling you is, has nothing to do with West Palm Beach. It is in litigation. It is in litigation. The litigation is causing some of these delays. And when it gets out of litigation, which is undetermined, there's funding that is just not, the funding doesn't line up to move the project forward as scheduled. And so we have to push that project out, and the project cost has increased significantly enough to where FDOT has to find other funding sources. And so that's directly impacted our local initiatives program. As you saw, we didn't get to fund all of our projects from last grant cycle. So we're keeping this project alive. It's still a TPA priority. We're still moving forward. We're not taking it off the transportation improvement program. We don't want to delay the project. We do want to move it forward because it is a TPA priority and it always has been. So it will be, we're dedicated to seeing it built. We're working with FDOT to the best of their ability to deal with whatever barriers there are, whether it's whatever they are, whether it's litigation, design, Army Corps of
Litigation from who,
Engineers,
Jason?
any of those issues. And then there's also shortfalls in funding. So funding always escalates. The project keeps getting more expensive, and almost every project we see coming before us today has construction cost increases and inflation. And so as costs just continue to increase, we have to find the funding, and we have to make the tough decisions of what are we going to fund and what are we not going to fund. And the TPA, we're taking a stance to where we're not funding any of our local initiatives grant funding program, any of our local initiative grant projects, which are all locally driven projects that are put forward to all of our local partners, and we're telling them like, we just don't have the funding because State Route 7 is a priority and we want to see it built, and we're doing the best that we can. And, that's where we're at today. It's still on the tip. It's
Okay.
still moving forward.
Litigation from whom? You said it's in litigation. This road should have been completed already years and years ago. This road's been planned for decades and decades and decades, and the city of West Palm has held this up and held this up and held this up. Everybody knows it. The hypocrisy from the city, from James, from Muyo, from going back to Lois Frankel with this road is unbelievable. They are the ones that continue to hold us up for a handful of people in the Ibis neighborhood who don't want a road behind their neighborhood. The excuse of snail kites and contaminating their water is false. It's a lie. And they want to shove Coconut Boulevard and Orange Boulevard and the acreage. They would prefer that be 5 lanes, and which would take homes and land from hundreds of people. That's not an option. This is insane. You cannot annex land from Palm Beach County. That was your water supply designed by Henry Flagler, and then build thousands and thousands of homes on your drinking water wetland, on your wetlands, roads. At North Lake Boulevard runs right through there, and then say, oh, if this neighborhood comes behind Ibis, it's going to contaminate our water. That is a lie. That needs to be known to everybody. And to see that this road is now delayed to 2028, $30 million more, and the cost is insane. This needs to be investigated. It is so blatantly obvious to so many people that this is a West Palm thing. And if anybody says, and I will talk with and speak with any about it from West Palm or anywhere else, oh no, if this road is built, it will contaminate our water. That is a lie, and everybody knows it. And anybody who continues with that narrative, i.e. the whole city of West Palm Beach government, commission, elected officials, they are liars. And this is ridiculous. The people out west in the lake, in the acreage, Loxahatchee, Royal Palm, Wellington area, we are getting slammed. Gardens needs to get on board with this. Those new neighborhoods along Gardens are getting slammed down North Lake Boulevard. These roads are treacherous out there, especially during rush hour. And this reliever road, I believe, and somebody can tell me, planned since 1948. Does that sound accurate? Am I right with that? I'd have to go back and look at my notes because I got
before
a
my
notebook
time.
full of stuff. You can't build a garbage dump on your wetlands and a hazardous materials recycling facility and then say this road's going to contaminate our neighborhood and then push the road out to 2028. Somebody needs to grow a set and get this done, whether it's TPA, FDOT, County Commission, somebody needs to find out what keeps going awry with this.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you so much.
And Chair, I would like to have a presentation from the TPA or FDOT based solely on the history of this road, the delays of this road, where the delays are coming from. Everybody needs to know about this. City of West Palm has spent over $15 million fighting this road, but I'll walk down the street right here and there's 30 homeless people every day sleeping in the beautiful end of Clematis Street. And no one's helping them. Maybe sending a little bit of them funds to get some people some help. I mean, I could talk about this for hours.
Thank you so much. Is there any other comment that we have on this? So, yes.
Yeah, I have a different comment or just a question for you. When you're talking about funds that are being reallocated from one year to another year, are these funds that have already been appropriated by the legislature when they come from a state general funds? Or do they have to be appropriated by the legislature and placed into the budget so they can be spent? Am I clear?
No,
I think these are upcoming funds. Like every year, the TPA has a certain dollar amount that is allocated on an annual basis, roughly about $20 million. And projects who each one of our city that we represent apply and they get ranked. And based on the ranking and the available funds, those projects get funded. I don't think it's an
But
approach.
the legislature and when they appropriate funds in the general, from the general fund for projects, do they have to reappropriate the money in a subsequent year if it's not spent in the fiscal year for which it was designated? I guess that's my question. Am I clear?
Why don't you answer this question?
Sure. I believe the whole work program is like approved by the legislature every year. Specifically for that, just want to make one note is that the funding that's in, for example, right now, fiscal year 2022 that we're operating, that all gets programmed and spent within fiscal year 2022. So it's not like where FDOT can like hold on to those funds and then move it to another outer year. It's actually just looking at an entirely new outer year and the funding available in that year. I'm not sure if that helps you with the.
We take funds and say, we're recommending that we reappropriate those fundings from fiscal year 2022 to fiscal year 2023 or 2024. Does the legislature have to reappropriate the funds in the next session?
I don't believe so. And what I mean by that is that, again, like those fiscal year 2022 funds all get spent up within fiscal year 2022.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I don't have the intricacies of that specifically for the legislature and appropriations, so. But what I just want to draw home the point is the funding in fiscal year 2022 is going to be reallocated towards anything that's happening in 2022 to meet other work program needs or priorities.
If it doesn't get spent in fiscal year 2022 for that project, then it doesn't go back into the general fund. It's still dedicated to that project. Can be.
Oh, no, it's dedicated towards other, it'd be re-obligated towards other priorities in that fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah, so for if there's any, I'm assuming what I'm hearing is that if there are any projects, because the TPA always receive more application than what's funding amount is available. So the priorities or the ranking of those projects list, if they don't get, let's say there's a cost saving somewhere, and that's rare, it'll go to those priority projects of that year.
Okay, then are you saying that Palm Beach County TPA spends whatever money's been allocated by the legislature for fiscal year 2022, and there may be projects that are not funded that have been approved, and then that funding, we recommend approval for the next year for other projects?
Like you're suggesting, if there's extra funds, can they be applied to another project?
No, I'm saying, it sounds like what you're telling me is that we spend the money that is the legislature appropriates pursuant to a ranking of the projects. And at some point in time, when that money runs out and the projects are not completed, then we reapply for more funding in the next legislative session to finish the project.
No,
No,
they
that's
always
okay.
fund projects fully to construction. They never half fund a project. So no project moves forward until it's fully funded for construction. They never just start a project and hope for more funding. That never happens. They always make sure it's fully funded.
So we're getting the money, and we're essentially guaranteed the money. It's just that we're authorizing expenditure, not in fiscal year, for example, 2022. It's got to be spent in 2023 for whatever reason the project has been delayed.
And that's
We're not
the
going to
fir-
lose the funds.
No.
No, that's right. We're not losing the funds, but remember that we're dealing with a lot of different funding sources, different pots. So for example, something like a state roadway is going to have for the most part, it has a lot of state funding on it, state gas taxes, they're called district dedicated revenue funds. When those don't, like, for example, something like State Road 7 doesn't happen that year. Any funding that's on there that was like district dedicated revenue, the FDOT's going to find another place for it. It's going to go on a 95 project. It's going to go on a resurfacing job, something else that had a cost overrun, or there might be another priority if it's in a need that's smaller that they can bump in a year that's okay in production that they can actually accelerate. They'll look for that. But would that get allocated specifically back to a TPA priority? No. Some of the funds do, like, if we have our federal funds that come to us directly, that's SU funds that we mentioned that Jason's program has. Those we do have a direct say in, and we work with FDOT on that. But a lot of those funds, such as district dedicated revenues, state gas taxes, they're going to get allocated wherever they need to get things done for for those projects in the work program.
Is FDOT a conduit for all of the federal funds, or do we get federal funds directly? Does the
No,
county get?
we don't
federal-
get them directly, right? They're the conduit for that.
Okay,
It's almost like for us, like we give them our priorities and they have I guess they're like our mom and dad when it comes to, or at least we're the beneficiary of them. We can tell them where to put them, but they're the ones like managing the account. in the
well,
back end.
yeah, we'd love to tell them where to put it, but.
A lot of these local programs, the LI, the local programs, the $20 million that we get on average every year, they're reimbursement programs. That means that the city has to front the
Well, we have to
money.
pay the money and then. we
And
get
then
reimbursed,
you
yeah.
submit your reimbursement to FDOT and they reimburse this. And that's typically how the programs are. VJ, do you have a comment on this particular item? Or can it be deferred until we hear James? Thank you
Okay,
so
good.
much.
So James, sit tight. I'm going to do the obligation report as an informational item. We're going to dig a little deeper into where funds go and,
Great.
so
Thank
we'll
you.
have a little more of a discussion further on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go through 7 slides. And
Yes,
we
already
will
turned
have
over.
robust discussions on this. Thank you.
Okay. I am James Brown at the Turnpike. I am the MPO liaison. Bear with me as I navigate glasses for the first time doing a presentation. The Turnpike is going to be allocating $1.3 billion into Palm Beach County in our tentative work program for fiscal years 24 through 28. We have an additional $12.5 million, which will be allocated to study projects. The $1.3 billion that I mentioned, all involve construction funding. So you can see Florida's Turnpike system. We're over 500 miles of roadway. The asterisk 48 miles, that is First Coast Expressway, which is being planned as a loop around the Jacksonville area. And you can see your section right there in red, Palm Beach County. And those are the projects what we'll focus on this afternoon. So the Turnpike is part of FDOT and shares their vision. Though portions of the Turnpike main line have been around since 1957, the Turnpike Enterprise was formed 20 years ago. So we just celebrated a 20-year anniversary as an enterprise. As one FDO team, we follow the department's vision and mission as we help to meet the state's transportation needs, ensuring value to customers that use our roadways, protecting investors that hold the bonds, and managing the Turnpike in a business-like manner. This is a pretty profound slide with regard to growing transportation needs. Takes a 20-year look at what has increased in Florida. You look at the population, 31%, with 37% registered vehicles have increased over the last 20 years. We also took a look at the Turnpike system with regard to miles traveled, and you can see that we've realized an 80% increase in people utilizing the roadways. That is system-wide. That's not specific to Palm Beach County, and that does include the increased commercial vehicles on the road. So to help meet those transportation needs, the Turnpike primarily receives our funding through our toll and concession revenue. And we basically are verifying that we're receiving the information as people utilize our roadways. We do have a small portion that comes from our service plazas. We typically do not receive any federal funding. Occasionally, we'll have a partnership program. The Glades Interchange project down in Miami-Dade, Broward line. That's a partnership with District 6. And that would be one of those examples. According to our bond covenants, for those monies that we do utilize for construction, the Turnpike must pay for operations and maintenance costs first. And this includes the cost to collect and process our tolls. Then we pay off the debt on the bonds issued to construct our major projects. It should be noted that the Turnpike has one of the highest credit ratings and has historically benefited from some of the lowest borrowing costs in the toll industry. We then invest the revenue into renewal and replacement, so fixing roadways, repaving, making the markings easier to be seen. That has a huge impact on the EV vehicle. And then lastly, we utilize the remaining funds to pay for our capital improvements such as widenings and interchanges. How do we prioritize our needs? The Turnpike has various ways of determining how projects get funded, depending on the project type. Annually, we're going to compile our traffic trends report, and this utilizes data in forecasting. All of our projects must demonstrate a transportation need. And each year, we're going to look at the observed traffic data and future productions across the entire system and compiling our annual traffic trends report. This use of statistical data, a lot of it's collected by counties as well as data that we receive from developers. It's going to take into account environmental and economic feasibility. But of course, ultimately, stakeholder input is most important. Throughout our project phases, we are constantly meeting with local cities, local agencies, gathering that input through the process. So this is the slide that you're probably most interested in. This is kind of where we're going to be allocating our programming into the next 5 years. This slide here, you're looking at widening the Turnpike main line from 4 to 8 lanes. So these are different segments that we're going to be programming into work program. You can see where the construction falls at which fiscal year. A lot of these involve interchange improvements, making the flow off the Turnpike easier. We're going to obviously be looking at the roadways as far as markings, directional signage. And just for example, if you want to look at the first one, you're going to be looking at interchange improvements at Beeline Highway as well as PGA Boulevard. You look at the second one down, we're looking at a bridge replacement. And then third down, you're looking at new on-ramps at Okeechobee and new southbound off-ramps at Jog Road. And then lastly, on that page, you're looking at interchange improvements to be evaluated at Southern Boulevard. All of these projects do obviously incorporate noise wall. And then we basically gather information and see which areas along this corridor will qualify for that. Question?
Yeah, I'm actually very curious. A few years ago, I would say about 6 years ago, there was a presentation from the Turnpike on managed lanes. And it was in the same, I guess it goes hand in hand with any widening. Would managed lane be still considered as far as a strategy?
We're actually at the last part of the presentation. Those dollars that are programmed into the studies are actually, it's going pretty much from the Broward County line up to around Lake Worth Road. That section is looking at having the managed lanes. So we're actually looking to go from from 6 to 10 lanes there. And you'll see, we're actually refer to them as through lanes. What's nice about those, I'll add, is that unlike your major interstates that have the designated lane, which you have to pay a toll to get in, we don't charge any additional tolls for our through lanes. So you do need to utilize a transponder. But that's a good thing to point out. The West Palm Beach Service Plaza, we're going to have improvements there. We're looking at increasing the passenger parking, 49 spaces. We're also looking at increasing truck parking there. The design right now has for an additional 17 truck parking and 2 tandem truck parking. And then TSM&O interchange improvements at Boynton Beach Boulevard. That's looking at pretty much having a dual exit ramp to make it easier to have that flow off of the Turnpike. We're looking at drainage improvements really in preparation for the widenings. A lot of this has not been touched. Portions of the Turnpike have been around since 1957. So a lot of this is pretty much getting everything in place to support the widening efforts down the road. We're looking at widening another section around Glades Road. And then again, we're looking at adding auxiliary lanes from Broward to Palm Beach County line around the Glades Road interchange. Now your packets do detail the actual work program. And I can tell you, if you do reference on there, page 19 and 20, you'll see the additional 5 projects where we've allocated funds pretty much to do an engineering and studies with regard to that section that I mentioned, widening the turnpike from 6 to 10 lanes.
All right, thank you so much. We're gonna move on to member comments, but at this time, are there any public comments on this item?
Not at this time, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to actually, James.
All right,
Did I get you you off guard?
no.
Okay.
No, real quickly, just a comment about an earlier topic that Richard brought up. I don't know the history of the SR7, all what's led to this point in the history of that stuff, but I do know that the county was commissioning a study on widening North Lake that's gaining resistance, and SR7's been in the pipeline and that's gaining resistance. So meanwhile, we have the residents out there that, one traffic accident on North Lake at the right time of day means people don't get to work. Kids don't get to school. So is there a solution to this, or is literally SR7 or widening North Lake the only options?
Well, Palm Beach County does have an internal network of roadways within like the acreage in Loxahatchee that they do plan to widen, like Coconut Boulevard and a few others. So the county has a 5-year road program. They do plan on widening roads internally, to at least increase capacity within those communities, but they do not make the connection, I don't think, all the way to North Lake. So, the regional connectivity may not necessarily be there as a component of those widenings. So that's all I could really say, or no.
No, and I understand, because by 2028, the Avenir community will be close to probably being built out the rate they're going. So that's another 3,000 plus homes out there that will impact the traffic in that area. So it's just, like I said, just thinking out loud.
I mean,
But,
these are all roadways. We do have a Okeechobee roadway, transit study, corridor study. I mean, we are looking at transit. So there's other modes of transportation out there, and we're looking to come out west and, bring transit out west and alleviate traffic by way of transit. So that is a golden opportunity before us.
And my second question has to do with the turnpike. The PJ to Indian, the area from PJ Boulevard, from North Lake to PJ Boulevard, the B line further north, 4 to 8 lanes. Is there any right of way acquisition required as part of that project?
There is going to be, that is planned in the programming costs, yes.
All right.
Yep.
Do you have any idea of where those areas are at, or what is it? Commercial, residential? What is the primary?
I can
right
go
of way?
back to the project manager. I can gather that information and have our summary prepared for the committee.
Okay, and then
Yep.
secondly, I know there's also a long-term plan for an interchange at Central Boulevard.
Which boulevard?
The Central Boulevard. I think there was I remember seeing something about their Central Boulevard and the Turnpike, a new exit right there, maybe, or is that 95?
That's,
95?
yeah,
Okay.
we're actually looking at Hypoluxo Road.
Yep.
That's in part of our studies for a full interchange there.
All right, thank you. Are there any other member virtually on this item? Richard?
If I could just answer something James was saying about roadways out of the acreage in Loxahatchee in relation to Palm Beach Gardens. You're 100% correct. One accident on North Lake Boulevard and we're done out there. At one time, I believe it was North Lake Boulevard was supposed to go out to the B line. That would be huge. Jason, maybe you can touch on that. That apparently that has been shut down and it's off the books. Also coming off of State Road 7, just north of Okeechobee, Roebuck Road was supposed to go through. That would be massive relief for Okeechobee Boulevard corridor between State Road 7 and Jog Road. That's another city of West Palm Beach. That when that land swap agreement was done back in the 90s, Palm Beach County turned the wetlands over to West Palm in exchange for Roebuck Road to be done as a future project. And well, another hypocrisy is City of West Palm. They got all their neighborhoods built on the land and the commercial developments and so forth, and that road is still not completed. Who, will that road also help more than anybody? All the neighborhoods that the City of West Palm built, Bay Winds, Andros Isles, Riverwalk, all those, that would help them more than anybody. But these people have been indoctrinated to believe that their water is going to be contaminated, yet they don't even know that they live on the wetlands.
All right, thank you. Myron.
I wanted to respond to James too, just to remind him, if he didn't know, that George Webb, who was the county engineer, about a year before he resigned, he retired. He proposed what he regarded as the only solution to North Lake Boulevard, which was double decking. He did so, it was facetious comment, but the problem was the county commission had just kept approving more and more developments to the west without taking into account the transportation issues developed by them.
All right, thank you.
Well, let me respond to that, Myron. Yes, Palm Beach County did develop west. So did the city of West Palm. Go to the museum over here at the old courthouse and look at all the beautiful photos from the 1950s and stuff. And where you can see where the future I believe Palm Beach Mall was going to be built. And it says City of West Palm Beach moves west. And boy, did they with the development that they did on their wetlands. So City of West Palm is a major contributor to the traffic problems and the holding up of State Road 7. It's so obvious. It's unbelievably obvious, and I don't understand how this has continued. This runs so deep. It is I think it's completely corrupt, and the waste of tax dollars, and now $30 million, if this road ever even does get built to taxpayers of everyone, is completely, utterly insane.
Thank you. Albert.
My question is on the slide that said what was not funding. Seeing how everybody's mostly concerned about their own neighborhood, I saw that the Barwick Road pedestrian shared use path was now not being funded. That roadway and that pathway would lead children from their neighborhood safely to two schools, Carver Middle School, which was mistakenly built on Atlantic Avenue, and Banyan Creek Elementary, which is on Barwick, just north of Lake Ida Road. Where is that money going to? Is that being diverted to State Road 7? Why?
There is an actual path still there on Barwick Road. When we did the fields,
It's not safe. There's been bicycle fatalities there numerous times. Children going to school. State Road 7, I drive on it all the time, and there's never traffic from Okeechobee to Boca. It's 2 lanes each direction. It's wide open. People are doing 70, 80 miles an hour. I don't understand that philosophy. So I won't be supporting that whatsoever.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I am very conflicted. I absolutely support regional connectivity, but I am very conflicted because as a resident of the city of Boca and also working full-time in Delray, having these projects sacrificed that serves as the core value and mission of the TPA, which is ultimately providing multimodal connectivity. I'm very conflicted, but I cannot support this project or this motion.
I could preface this a little bit. So this morning we had a technical advisory committee meeting. We did pass the draft tentative work program as it is presented, but we also included some language directing the board to work with FDOT to find funding for these particular projects, because they're all locally driven projects. They're all TPA priority projects. We know State Route 7 is one of our top priorities, and we do still want to see that being built. But this jeopardizes our locally driven TPA priority projects, and we still want to see these funded. We just have to work more collaboratively with FDOT and direct our board. When the board sees all of this information next week, they'll get the message that from the TAC, and if you wished, it could be the same for the CAC, to work with FDOT to find funding for these particular projects where feasible. do your best to find funding to keep these projects funded in 2028 and not move them out to 2029, which is what our intent is. These projects aren't going to go away. I'm going to reach out to each one of these applicants and ask them if they want to be considered in this next grant cycle, not have to fill out anything, just take the raw scores, incorporate them into the overall applications that we do receive this year, and, see how things kind of shake out with the priorities of all of the projects as an alternative to let's work with FDOT to find additional funding or, find a way to fund these projects in some capacity. So we are trying to do that. At least the TAC went in that direction. So I just wanted to let you know, like, that is on the, that message is going to be received by the governing board next week on Thursday.
Thank you. I think not to words are very important. Not so much as try their best, but they will reallocate state funding for this project so that it will free up the funds for local agencies. I don't know how to craft the motion, so I would need assistance from staff. James?
If you would
So
like, I can pull up the motion that was used at TAC this morning as a reference point, and you all can wordsmith it.
That will help. And then at the
Recommend endorsement of the FDOT fiscal year draft tentative work program with the proviso that they find funding for the items that were excluded from funding as set forth in that slide.
yes,
Am I
yes.
understanding correctly?
and that's exactly what we
yes.
did this morning. It's up on the board right there. This is
That's
the
what I would
motion
do
that
with
was
it.
made.
Right, I think the Amanda staff is going to pull up a motion that was presented at this morning technical advisory committee as a frame of reference, and then we can review it and make modification as needed so that we can because I do support the work program. I'm just very conflicted that the funding is not being allocated for local projects.
I mean, if you
Right.
could put that slide up there.
Right there.
So the slide that's up right now is the slide or the motion
but-
that was made by the technical advisory committee this morning. If you would like to take a moment to read it as a committee, and then I'm happy to edit it based off of your preferences.
Does this comport, Madam Chairman, does this comport with your concerns and the committee's concerns about those projects that are not funded?
I yes and no. Yes, the support is there, but
Can you put the slide back up that we just saw that had the funds that weren't, the projects that were not funded?
Yes.
And then, okay.
So this is the
Projects not
ranking.
funded, those are the concerns, right?
absolutely.
So I move to recommend endorsement of the FDOT fiscal year 2024-2028 draft tentative work program with the proviso that they find funding, if they can, for the projects not funded as set forth in this slide. Project applicant year rank 2022-1 Southwest 18th Street, 2022-3 Gardens Parkway Bike Lane, 2022-44 electric buses Palm Tran.
Yeah, so we're saying LI projects
all those LI
21-1
projects,
through
yes.
22-7. So we're just,
That's covered in this motion?
yes, so
Yes.
that's why LI projects 22-1 through 22-7. That's the year and the rank of those projects.
Then I will amend my motion to recommend endorsement of that fiscal year 2024-2028, the draft tentative work program with the provision that FDOT finds funding for L1 projects 22-1 through 22-7.
As stated on the screen. Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, Myron, do you have a comment?
My comment on this motion is it says that if FDOT cannot find funding for those projects, they can't fund the draft tentative work program. I think that's very poorly worded. That's a provision. That's a requirement on FDOT that it finds funding for those projects or the TAC did not endorse cannot endorse the draft tentative work program.
So that particular language would most likely, if it goes in that direction, the board makes the ultimate decision. And us as a recommending body, we're providing a recommendation to endorse the draft tentative work program. And these are our additional concerns. And these concerns go to the governing board. And ultimately, what you're saying in terms of don't fund the draft tentative work program, or if you do fund the draft tentative work program, you must find funding for these local initiative projects. That kind of direction could come directly from our governing board. And that's where that would happen. Here, we're recommending endorsement. We're not formally adopting the draft tentative work program, which is the obligation of the governing board. So that's kind of where our responsibility is as a CAC, as a recommending body to the governing board. We're not
Right.
making the
I
final
understand that.
decision.
I understand that, but this language is a recommendation that if FDOT cannot find that funding, that the draft tentative work program not be supported. It's just a question of language.
Sure.
I
The
don't think
draft
so.
tentative
I
work
think the
program,
Provision
it's-
here is, the word provision is what worries me.
I'm sorry, Paula Ryan, please.
Thank you. I understand what the discussion is all about, but I think it should be clear that we could, pass a motion to have, unicorns and pink fluffy clouds and whatever we wanted. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, when it shows up at the TPA, they will make the final decision as to how this is presented back to FDOT. And I think the point, Madam Chair, to your request is that these projects are really important on a local level to us. And we know that we don't have the authority to just go out and move money around and write checks. But if there is a way to push forward, then we would in fact like them to make that a priority. So we could say what we want and it doesn't matter. Not to make you feel bad about being here, but this is our chance to give our opinion, and that's it.
Right.
I think we're telling them to do their best to find the money, and if they can't find the money, this is what our priorities are, and if you find the money, and if you can't, then, we'll try again.
I'm
Yes.
VJ and then Jim, please.
So I am fully supportive of what we have in front of us. The point was, as Paula said, we are just giving our advice. We are not decision maker. We are advising body. So we are advising, and we are basically asking FDOT and TPA to find funds. So we are fully supportive, and I do want to go back to the discussion we didn't have, and we don't want to have probably is regarding the State Road 7. We need to have some discussion on it. And I think we missed the 3 cities over there, which is Belglade, South Bay, and Pahokee. They don't feature that much in this discussion, but they are also getting impacted. I go there every day and they are getting impacted. They are every day, like anything that happens on Southern, they get impacted. So we need to have some discussion. It's just my personal privilege I'm talking about. That discussion has to have happened. There has to be a resolution between City of West Palm Beach and Palm Beach County that this cannot keep dragging on, and we blaming this on litigation. This is just not acceptable.
All right, thank you so much. Jim Knight, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, I believe there's a motion on the floor, first and a second. I think we just call the question.
I apologize. I just wanted to point this out, and this goes, Madam Chair, what you mentioned earlier about supporting the regional connectivity. The discussion at the TAC meeting, you notice it's sort of like how this plays out from a funding LI versus where else to put it. Right now, that funding is on State Road 7 in the new 5th year. Okay, so just to be clear on that, you might want to provide some clarity on State Road 7 when you're talking about this. The way it's written now is, I mean, obviously, FDOT and we will look at ways to try to get these funded, but realize right now State Road 7 is where that money is going in this draft. So that kind of gets to your point where it's like, well, which one do you want to get funded? Or is FDOT going to fund these and not State Road 7? Obviously, that's going to be determined at the board meeting, but I just wanted to make sure that you, whatever direction you give to the board, that it doesn't get misconstrued, that you want to take out State Road 7 funds and put these funds in, unless that's the direction you're trying to go. But I just wanted to make sure you clarify that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Jim. We do have a motion on the table.
Thank you. When you were just talking about the State Road 7, there's a whole lot going on here right now. State Road 7 funds, you talking about the extension funds? Or were we talking about?
Correct. So, obviously it can be difficult to talk about, switching funds for another funds in the work program. But yes, these are the ones we're talking about right now, is the ones that ate up all those local initiatives projects that you're not seeing, the ones that weren't getting funded. It's the $21 million there, these service transportation funds. Those right now are on State Road 7 in fiscal year 2028. So I just wanted to make you all aware that when you state, I want to make sure that these LI projects get funded by all means necessary, or however, I think, us and AFDOT would go back and try to get that done with not impacting State Road 7. But right now, that's where the fundings are. The funding is at State Road 7. Obviously, this will be cleared up at the board, but I just want to make sure that you all have a clear direction and your recommendation to the board.
And this is what we're getting ready to vote on.
Yeah.
To continue this funding. Future funding. Just making sure.
This is the correct one? Okay, this is the way you have it written right now for the motion on the floor.
Yeah.
So with the provision that AFDOT finds funding for LI products 21 through 2022, 7.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank you. We can go to a vote. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, we have Myron against. All right, moving on to information item, the fiscal year 22 annual listing of obligated projects. Jason? Thank you so much again.
One-man show today with guest appearances.
Good.
Okay, so this is an informational item. So there'll be no vote required at the end. So the annual list of obligated projects. What is this? So the obligated projects has three components. First is the programmed amount, which is the transportation improvement program programmed amount that you'll see in the next slides or in the backup information. There's three columns. The first one is the actual programmed amount in the tip, and that's the funds that are intended to construct the project with all of those components. The obligated amount is the commitment to reimburse up to that amount for that specific project, which is basically the funding that is spent on that project compared to the amount that was programmed. And then the de-obligation amount is the amount that is reduced when the project is either its remaining cost, or it's near closeout, or just it's additional funds or leftover funds for the project. And so why does FHWA approve obligations that do not match the TIP programmed amounts? So there's three different reasons. Project phases may not have been completed and moved out to the current fiscal year. A lot of these projects are multi-year projects. They take several years to complete, either from beginning to acquiring right away to design to construction. And so they fully fund the projects, like I said before. So they fully fund it up to construction, but as it moves through the TIP process and it is in that current year, if a phase isn't completed, then those funds are then rolled forward. And that's always the first amendment of the transportation improvement program that I brought to you the last time we met, I believe, where the first amendment of the Transportation Improvement Program is to move the funds from 2022 into 2023, because those are the additional funds, the leftover funds that were not spent in 2022, and you move them into 2023 for concurrency to keep the funding with that project as it moves forward through to construction. Also, FDOT swaps state and federal funds within a project. They will pay for something up front with state funds and get reimbursed with federal funds later. Through one of those funding codes is advanced construction funds. So we leverage state funds to build projects and then get reimbursed later on with federal funds. And then lastly, Florida uses the FDOT uses state funds to oversubscribe to federal aid programs and increase their statewide totals each year. So they fully maximize the amount of federal funds that they receive from the federal government. So they definitely have enough projects that they're building and that they're, oversubscribing just to make sure that there's no money left on the table. So I do have an example here. So this particular example, you see, they didn't request any funds for this particular project, but there's funds that were spent on the project and gets reimbursed. So when you look back before fiscal year 22 in 2019, this was a $28 million project. And they used the state funds, like I was mentioning, to construct the project. And then they get reimbursed with federal funds later on, what you see here in fiscal year 22. With another funding code. NHPP is just their funding code for federal dollars. So this is the way the state leverages state funds through advanced construction to build a project and then get reimbursed years later with federal funds. And this is that oversubscription to projects, making sure that they're able to get reimbursed for federal funds for federal eligible cost. So that's why you see that there's no tip request funds, but they're still receiving money. And this is how they balance it out. This is the balance sheet of getting paid back when you use state funds with federal funds. And it's a multi-year process. So through that multi-year process, that's why you see the differences between the obligation report and it doesn't match the tip, is because they're multi-year projects and you're using state funds in the beginning and getting federal funds at the end as you move through the process. So that's one of those examples of how that happens and why there's differences between the programmed tip amounts and the obligated amounts. And so just as a summary, I just wanted to show you the total amount that we see in the tip is 242 million of programmed funding in all of the tip sections, and the obligated amount, how much was spent on these projects in 2022 is about 80 million. De-obligated amount, money that was just closed out from those projects from one reason or another. Sometimes they're de-obligated because the project is removed from the program because the project is canceled by way of an applicant, or they change the scope of their project and it's less expensive. And then you see the remaining funds of 165 million from the 242 million that was originally programmed. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what the obligation report is. It's kind of a snapshot of how much funds were spent in 2022 and how much is remaining, basically.
Right.
Yes, James.
Yeah, I have a question. So FDOT is appropriated $10 million in 2019 for a project that gets spent in 2019 or 2020. And then 2021, you get reimbursed back. FDOT gets reimbursed back.
Yes.
Where does that money go? Because the $10 million has been spent in the budget from 2019 to 2020. So that's a zero item on the budget, zeroed out, and money comes back into the budget.
Right.
And so you have a positive that year. How,
I mean, I'm
missing
sure
something here.
it's a revolving door, revolving funds to where those funds get right back into right back into,
They can reuse the funds that come in from,
yeah,
replace those funds.
yeah, because there's
I get it.
always transportation needs. There's always projects to be built.
And then they
that's-
can refund, they can use those money again to fund the project in 2023 or 2024.
It's cyclical,
Okay. Thank you.
sure.
All right.
Yes,
Are there
Sammy.
any comments? Oh, Sammy.
I have one more. You mentioned earlier about the Okeechobee study that you guys are getting ready to do or have started.
Yes, that's coming up.
Yeah, it's the next.
We're gonna do
item
it.
on
We're
the
gonna do it
agenda.
then. That's
On
the
the
next
agenda.
presentation.
Didn't even look. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any other comments? Okay, great. No virtual comments, right? So we're gonna move right into the Okeechobee multimodal corridor study. And we have our consultant that is going to be presenting on this item. Anybody from Kittleson that would like to? Yeah.
Also gonna, Brian Rucher or.
Yeah,
Valerie's gonna give
Brian.
it The initial portion of it. And then,
Okay,
John Lafferty and myself.
I believe Brian has stepped out for another meeting. So,
So we'll have Valerie get that piece. when she comes back. She's
Okay,
going to
so,
check.
would you like to introduce yourself
Sure.
to kill the idle time?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. My name is JP Wiesner. I'm a principal with Kittleson and Associates. And we also have,
Good afternoon. I'm John Lafferty. I'm with Kimley Horn.
All right,
and we both are consultants working for the TPA on the Okeechobee study for the last maybe year and a half, 2 years almost.
perfect. And we're gonna have Valerie to introduce the study. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Our Deputy of Multimodal, Brian Rusher, was going to present these, but he had to step out for another meeting. So we're very excited to bring this to you. It's a planning study that we're concluding on the Okeechobee Boulevard and State Road 7. And this is a corridor. Here's a map of the corridor. It's about 13.5 miles that we've been working on from downtown West Palm Beach to State Road 7 on the corner of State Road 7 Okeechobee, all the way down to the Wellington Mall at Forest Hill. This study was part of our 561 plan, but also part of a regional plan of network of corridors for enhanced transit in our region. We are one urbanized area to the federal government with Miami, Broward, and Palm Beach counties, and we have a regional transportation plan with enhanced transit desires corridors. Both Broward and Miami-Dade County are actually moving forward with their plans. They have local funding sources to do so, but we, at our point in time, we're just initiating the planning studies to further identify what would make sense on these corridors. So that's what this study is about. As a region, we are growing in population. We're expected to grow to 7.5 million people by 2045, potentially more. These are numbers from our last regional transportation plan. So this is how we're looking at how are we going to be moving people around? We understand some corridors are primarily for cars, but there's other corridors that we want to try to move people in other ways. So this corridor was one of our 561 plan corridors. In our last 2045 long range transportation plan, we identified this network of corridors you see on the right, where it would make sense to have some sort of enhanced, reliable, frequent transit system in the future. These corridors were identified with Palm Tran, both north and east-west corridors. They have the highest number of people today and in the future, people and jobs per mile, which are requirements by the federal government, Federal Transit Administration to warrant more transit investments. So the blue highlighted area on the right is a 2-mile radius around these corridors. What we found was not only are these the highest current transit ridership corridors that with our current bus coverage, but also rail. But in addition, in the future, it's a little higher today, but in the future, this would capture 68% of the population in our county and households and 94% of all the non-farm jobs in the county. So in this core urban area, connecting with Broward and Miami-Dade counties, these are corridors that would make sense to potentially offer other ways to move around, and it would really alleviate the system as a whole. So this is one of those corridors that we studied of that network of corridors. And we had several goals of the study. So looking at offering mobility options, looking at that transit first lens. So we're looking at really trying to figure out what would be that enhanced transit experience, improving those first last mile connections and safety for all users. Also opportunities for affordable housing, education, jobs, healthcare, and identifying those redevelopment opportunities and infill opportunities around the corridor to try to focus more of that housing, affordable housing and jobs along this corridor and into the region. So when we think about affordable housing, which is a hot topic right now, if you put it in next to a system that is actually reliable and efficient to get you to where you need to go, you're helping also the affordability because you don't have to have that car payment and that car insurance and the gas. So by putting affordable housing far away and making people have to have a car, then it also kind of negates that benefit. Not sure when you jump in, but
Hand up to me. Thank
all
you.
right, thanks.
So as we look more specifically at the Okeechobee corridor, we see that it's a growing corridor with competing demands. There's 220,000 residents and about 185,000 jobs within 2 miles of the corridor. The population is steadily increasing, projected at within the corridor, about a 20,000 resident increase, and even more so with jobs. And when we think about how people are moving through, right now, 97% of people move via automobile, single occupancy automobile on the corridor itself. So there's a lot of competing demands. There's growth happening. The roadway itself is kind of maxed out at its size. Without going to double decking, it's not able to get too much bigger. So how are we going to begin to solve for not just the problems today, but into the future? You can see here, about 138,000 people travel on the study and its related network on work days. You can see the sort of inflow and outflow. And when we think about what we're really doing with these corridors, what we're doing with our transportation system, we're ultimately moving people. And when we think about the spatial implications, transit can move more people than a single automobile. And you can also look at that at this sort of diagram to understand, one bus moves that many people in that same amount of space than say all those cars do. And we think about what that means, it really means reliability, the ability that when you get onto the corridor, you're going to move through it in a certain amount of time to get from point A to point B, and that is going to be a consistent, reliable option for you in the future. When we think about that 97% of folks that are driving on the Okeechobee corridor, something like a transit system may capture a certain percent of that, but it's certainly not going to reduce it to where there's no cars. We're not talking about that. We're talking about balancing modes and getting to a different kind of a balance on the corridor itself. A lot of our work and our direction for this project came through public engagement. We got out into the corridor, we rode the buses, we talked to people face to face about things that they were concerned about, things that were problematic for them, issues like safety and not feeling comfortable walking along the corridor. When they do only have the ability to use only the bus, they don't have a vehicle, they have to walk to the bus stops, and those bus stops in and of themselves are very inhospitable in many cases. And so how do we begin to address some of those things and look at that? In addition, a lot of folks talked about that safety piece. The little icon, my icon there is blocking off the amount of bicycle and pedestrian crashes, but there's a significant amount of bicycle and pedestrian crashes on the corridor, and at least 14 have been killed in the last 5 years. So again, a lot of pushback on needing to change what that physical environment and demand of the corridor is. With that, I'll hand it over to John.
So when we were looking and responding to what we heard throughout the corridor, one of our first steps was to begin to look at various alternatives. And from a multimodal perspective, what does that include? And if you look at the top left there, no build, no change, essentially no action alternative. And then you can see highlighted in green is a number of rubber tired alternatives for bus rapid transit, looking at different ways that they would operate throughout the corridor within the existing right of way. And then on the bottom, we also looked at an investment in rail, looking at running in the median, whether it's at grade or elevated. As you saw earlier in the slides, when Valerie was discussing goals and objectives of the project, we really assessed those goals and objectives based upon the input we heard, looked at the various modes, and started to really look at land use, the existing operating environment, the physical environment, multimodal connectivity, traffic, a whole host of different issues throughout the corridor as we evaluated those alternatives that were presented on an earlier slide. And you can see here, this is an overview of some of the findings that we learned through that evaluation related to traffic, revitalization in the corridor, looking at existing land use and the opportunities for redevelopment, understanding and hearing from the input the dissatisfaction of non-motorists utilizing Okeechobee, and then also looking at it from a health impact assessment and understanding what can we do to further help advance and improve that as part of this study. So what we determined was, an ultimate vision that came forth from the study was center running dedicated light rail transit. And what I want you to take away from this slide is the concept that we've illustrated up here in terms of physically this concept being implemented on Okeechobee Boulevard and showing that there'd be light rail transit at grade in the median. Again, consistent with those goals and objectives. Why dedicated running LRT? It provides a trip reliability, a dedicated fixed guideway that's independent of other traffic, gives you travel time and reliability that will seek to attract riders on transit. Cleaner technology in terms of health and air emissions, safety, in terms of us looking at where we can improve those connections to transit stations up and down the corridor and beyond the first mile, last mile connectivity. Provides an additional mobility choice. It also emphasizes a fixed investment that is going to be there for many years to come and it's not going to move, which is going to promote and attract redevelopment, infill, and some other development opportunities that exist along the corridor. And it also provides us with scalable capacity where you can expand trains once the demand continues to grow after the system is in operation.
So dovetailing into the alternative analysis, we also took a look at how land use and economic development would grow and react to the investment in transit. And what we took a look specifically at was something called transit-oriented development, or TOD, as I will refer to it. And TOD is in essence a pedestrian-focused, compact development footprint surrounding a transit location that focuses on mix of uses, mix of open space and stormwater, all within a sort of walking distance of about a half mile of a given station. And so when we talk about things like affordable housing, we talk about locating people near where they work, play, live. That's what this is about, is beginning to change some of our growth patterns to align with that. And we looked at each station area within the Okeechobee corridor, and this is an example of the station area around State Road 7. And you can see kind of in the blow up of the map there, we looked at what potential new network would come in through either utilized properties or currently vacant properties. And at that location at State Road 7 in Okeechobee, there's a large portion of land that is not currently developed on the southeast corner. And what would that look like? How would that be a walkable kind of environment? And how would it begin to make connections across State Road 7 and Okeechobee to potentially other locations within that core area, noting that the station for this project would be at that intersection? Then we took that and said, so what does that actual impact say in a 2045 timeframe? 1,300 potential new homes, of those about 200 or so that could be affordable housing based on a 15% requirement, 5,600 potential new jobs, and most sort of excitingly is potential for 632 million of additional ad valorem taxes. And what that is looking at is saying, what is the performance of the land within that quarter mile of the station today? What is the land value? What are those properties paying in taxes? And what could we see with development that occurs in its density, in the kind of transit-oriented development type that we're seeing? What could we see as development that may come from that? And again, beginning to look at ways that that land can outperform what it's currently doing and begin to create great places to live, work, and play. Also in this location, we looked at a potential for how a park and ride would be integrated into this urban form. And up on the right side there, you can kind of see a park and ride with a building kind of fronting the street with access to the sidewalk and then moving into the center for the where the station would be. And then there's sort of a rendering there showing how that might look. And believe it or not, that is all within Okeechobee space today. So that's a very different environment than what's out there today. Along those lines of the revenue potential that I was talking about, the way we examined this was we looked at what that current value of the land within that area is, and in this case, 395 million. And we looked at a couple of different potential concepts of a higher rate of return on that, a lower rate, and what that kind of median is. And that's where we came up with the 632 million difference. That's plus in addition to the 395. And in addition to that, we also looked at what different opportunities there would be for that potential affordable housing. What if we were to go to higher numbers would be the subsidy needed to offset some of that for developers when they come in. And again, recognizing that those numbers, as they relate back to what we could get out of that value, allow for a lot of that to happen. So tying the economic development to the land uses to this transportation investment, that's smart transportation. That's thinking about the future in a smart way, in ways that traditionally, at least in Florida, we haven't really done. And so that's part of what we want to do as part of this project and moving forward from the vision standpoint. So with that, I'll give it back to Valerie to close us out.
Thank you. So this is a planning study. The first step was identifying that network of desires of enhanced transit in the future. The next step was this planning study. After this, it's basically kind of realizing that vision, moving that vision forward. What happens next is that FDOT is going to, this is an FDOT roadway, both State Road 7 and Okeechobee. They're going to do a feasibility and more in-depth study based on this planning study of these alternatives, looking at what that feasibility would be, doing some more modeling analysis, and that's scheduled for fiscal year 25. After that, as a county, we have to have that conversation and see when and if we'll be ready to have a local funding source to move forward with more concrete steps such as PD&E and actual programming, construction, and later further out years. And that means having a local funding source to do that. These projects require all of these steps. They're a long process. We're still in the vision phase right now, in the planning phase, but you need that buy-in. And ultimately, after that feasibility analysis, we will need a local funding source in the future to be able to match capital dollars that are things that we could ask for and prioritize with operations and maintenance, that local commitment. So Broward and Miami have those commitments in place. They're moving forward. We have the vision, now the planning study, and then further analysis with feasibility. Meanwhile, talking with our local municipalities along the way, with residents, talking about sharing these ideas, sharing the potential for land use and economic development along this corridor, and further refining and analyzing the study. So that's in a nutshell. It's a very large document. There's more to it. We also did a health impact assessment as part of this. It was very interesting. We had a health impact assessment working group, and we were actually just talking about potentially having a webinar, informational webinar, diving a little bit deeper into those results, but very exciting. And we look forward to looking at the other corridors on this. Obviously, regional, these enhanced transit corridors are just a piece of the puzzle of moving everyone around. They're fixed corridors, but we are working with our local municipalities, with Royal Palm Beach. They're working on a mobility plan, and those first last mile connections, local circulars, on-demand transportation. And as we were talking about the example of State Road 7 Okeechobee, a park and ride location there, imagining that as a potential, what we see at Meisner Park or Rosemary Square, somewhere where people could actually live, work, and play, or get there and have a one-seat ride into downtown and into the rest of the region by not having the option to not have to use their car. So.
Okay, thank you. We have a lot of cards. BJ.
So question on slide 15. So these numbers you have, is this for the entire project? Or this is just one?
This is for just State Road 7.
Just for.
For that station
That
at State
station
Road
alone.
7. That's correct.
Pretty
So we
impressive.
have the similar numbers. They change obviously when the current value is different. So in downtown, we have we looked at a station location around Rosemary Square. And those numbers were very different than these. But when we looked at all of these, what we're really talking about is what that potential change of value in the land is. And really what we're seeing is there's a lot of underinvestment in the corridor, even though we see a lot of built investment out there, the quality and level could be a lot higher as it relates to what transit will bring to the table. So.
And follow up on that one, in one of the slides, you had the affordable housing as percentage of the whatever is going to get built. Is that going to be a recommendation that it has to have that much, like, should be part of the program? That whenever any development happens in those areas, the affordable housing has to be 15% or whatever you are recommending?
Right, so out of this isn't necessarily a recommendation on that specific percentage. The county does have some goals as it relates to what percentage could be included. And through that, the developer may get other incentives. So if they include, say, up to 15%, they might get a density bonus for their project as it comes in. What we're looking at is, and the diagram there to the right on this says, in most markets right now, you get anywhere between a 7 to 15% in terms of the kind of development that you may see coming in. There's also certain kinds of developers that focus on affordable projects. They know how to make those happen in terms of how they finance their own project and other grants and things that they get. That can be increased. And the idea is that if we want to increase that, it's going to come with additional subsidies needed, right? So the bottom line you see there where it says additional subsidy needed, 29 million versus 97 million to pump it up to 50%. That difference is we're making sort of an awareness that with that, we'll need additional subsidy. However, the value added that's going to come out of this should accommodate for that additional subsidy. Now, the semantics and the policies that make that happen need to be put into place as it moves forward, but there's capacity for it. And that's really part of what we're saying the vision is.
Thank you.
James, did you have a comment on this? No? I thought you, okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you. The other James.
Great presentation, and I did read over a large chunk of the report, very thorough. And I will say that we have a problem in Palm Beach County where we can't make more land. So we need to make the land we have more useful. And I think that this really starts to chip away at some of the opportunities that align along this corridor and the catalyst it can be for solving some of the bigger problems if we have the appropriate long-term thinking for it. That being said, I think I'm very intrigued with where this is going. I'm very interested in the development potential, the affordable housing aspects, the improvements in health, the improvement in transportation, and the environmental impacts. There's just a lot that can really happen if this is executed correctly and done right. And I think that long-term thinking is definitely something I think we all can take back to our civic leaders in our communities and talk about how very rarely is there an opportunity in a community to do a long-term thinking, big gesture to improving the lives of not only us, but generations to come. And something like this is that opportunity. And so I just think we need to be a little more cognizant of this isn't just a funding issue. This isn't this is a reinvention and a modernization of a lot of really poorly utilized land to embrace a lot of people that are coming here that will come here, whether we, no matter what happens. So I just think that it's very important that we understand kind of what's really being talked about, That being said, I do have one question. Is there any estimated costs aligned with this LRT? With the light rail aspect of it? I mean, or is there, because I know you showed several options that were under consideration. There was buses, center mounted BRTs, LRT, Elevate, LRT. I'm just kind of curious, where's the threshold for ROI, as far as those options go? And obviously, light rail's great. People love trains, I understand, but is there a cost-effective option that might still get similar results, or?
We didn't get that far in terms of our evaluation. Again, in looking at the corridor, it's understanding the concepts and what could be implemented.
Okay.
We didn't find any fatal flaws. with the technologies and certainly the vision that was identified. And we did start to look at some of the capital costs in terms of a high level conceptual estimate. Rail is a little bit on the higher side than obviously bus because you've got that fixed investment. But again, you're looking at a project or you're looking at a 100-year type project or 100-year type investment. But we didn't get into ROI and we didn't get that far in terms of where we were with our evaluation. It was more of, let's look at the different multimodal options, understand how they compare against each other, the goals, and then how does it respond then to what we've heard from various stakeholders, the public, private sector and so forth.
So as part of the study, you're confident in saying that most people responded the most positively to light rail transit over other options that were going to considered?
Yeah, and as he mentioned, we do have some rough estimates. Obviously, the light rail is a more expensive cost. However, in terms of an ultimate vision, FDOT study might say, do a mixed bus first or do some other things first. But as the ultimate vision, we see this as the best potential to improve those goals that we were looking at as that incentive for redevelopment along the corridor. Developers have more incentive to develop next to put their eggs in their basket next to something that's permanent investment versus something that might roll away or go away tomorrow. So as part of those goals, we did hear a lot of, we do need one east-west rail. We have north-south Brightline, we have Tri-Rail, but we need something east-west. And, looking at some of our peers, we did a peer exchange with the Federal Transit Administration, Federal Highway Administration, right before the pandemic, when our peers looking at Cap Metro in Austin and also in Phoenix. In Phoenix, they've implemented light rail. It was a huge investment. They had, but it's been extremely successful. It was $2 billion when they implemented it. They'd had $12 billion worth of redevelopment investment in 10 years along the corridor and substantial community benefits from health, school enrollment, all kinds of benefits that have occurred from that. So right now it's like that ultimate vision of what we're recommending, but it needs to be further hashed out and evaluated further.
I mean, we've seen how Brightline builds their station here, then every block gets redeveloped around it accordingly. It's not a question of if, it's a question of what, it's not a question of will or if it's going to. If this is done right. So I think it's a really interesting opportunity, and I just hope that we can all advocate accordingly.
All right, thank you. Sammy? Oh, I know you were very interested to see this presentation, so, Paula?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And I'm glad this slide is up because I think what's really important is the projected revenue. I mean, those are real land valuation, projections based upon historical factors. So you mentioned other cities and other states that are doing things of that nature. And every time we talk about this, the cost is always like everybody just totally, doesn't even want to go forward. So my question is can we look at who out there on a financial model will underwrite those values? So those values only come into play if we can underwrite them and prove that that is a return on investment. Therefore, county makes an investment, private industry makes an investment, and everybody else. And so do we have that level of sophistication involved in this team? And if not, do we have a plan to bring that forward? Thanks.
That's a great question. And actually you're spot on your observation. For this project in particular, again, we are looking at this from a vision standpoint and getting the buy-in to the point where we can say, hey, let's study the real feasibility of this coming in. What we wanted to do here was to create that vision of what could be that potential in value capture that could be there. In terms of capturing that and putting in the policy and being able to either use this or borrow against it, that's actually the rub in almost all transit-oriented development projects. So I'll give you an example. Sunrail in Central Florida did not form CRA or development districts around their stations in each of the various locations. So as that project has moved from full implementation to shifting the balance of operations maintenance to local municipalities, there's not money for that yet. The land value has increased significantly and each of the towns along the way have been getting that funding. But because it's already into other budget sources, trying to separate that out to put it towards the Sunrail, not a lot of people want to swallow that, right? That's tough to do. So thinking about this ahead of time and saying, well, maybe we put in a district that captures the revenue here that then gets reinvested. We've talked about that. We've talked that in kind of a broad-based vision perspective with the county and with other municipalities as it relates to this. And yes, as this moves forward, that's something that'll have to happen in a parallel track, but it's something that would happen in the next phase in terms of the actual like formulating of those things.
And I just want to add to that, the question of the affordability and are these real numbers? Is that going to be a set aside? I think that the greater you can capture the value, the greater the opportunity that there is to do the affordable housing component, you know, on the front end in terms of your looking forward down the road. So thanks for that. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you so much, Ramona.
I echo everybody. Thank you for the presentation and thank you for offering this to the public, by the way. This is the first time that I actually actively tried to share on social media and such. And say to folks, hey, you have an opportunity. This is the vision time, your buy-in. My only heartache though, in reflecting back on the presentation, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, the data that came in, was it 400 total completed surveys? I don't know which slide that was. Sorry. And then, yeah, and I guess 100 interactive mapping comments, which I guess if they're maybe going on it. Okay, yeah. So that's the complete number of people that actually responded in full.
For this phase of the study, yeah. And so part of this is, initially getting the word out there and getting energy kind of behind it at the kind of vision statement. A lot of people might be interested in a particular location, like say downtown West Palm or a specific site, but kind of overall through the breadth of the quarter, it's like, oh, it just is what it is, So that's where we kind of overlapped those specific numbers from completed surveys with actually going out in the field and talking to people and getting those specific experiences. We actually could have had a whole presentation on just the feedback that we got from individuals. There was one gentleman that we talked to who talked about his age related to waiting at the bus stop in the sun. And, just the power behind people that use the system and want a better premium transit service and what that means for their lives and so forth. So there's a lot of those experiences that are kind of funneled into the bigger numbers. But the idea would be as this would move forward into the feasibility study and eventually PD&E, the amount of input and the amount of engagement would increase substantially.
Okay, I would hope so. And if there's anything that we can do from our end, just to help with the stakeholders.
Thank you. And I'll also mention that, we're at the beginning of this journey, which is very exciting because we're about to kick off our 2050 long range transportation plan, which is solidifying that vision and really focusing on that land use and transportation aspect. And we'll need all of your help over the next, that'll likely be kicking off in January with Nathan, our new LRTP coordinator here, a 2-year effort in line with the regional transportation plan, that 2050 vision. And we're going to need as much public participation as we can get into that effort. In addition, as a next step from this is just one of the quarters that we are studying. We are also going to do an effort looking at TOD opportunities across the whole network and those policy recommendations for the local municipalities and the other transit vision alternatives for those other quarters over the next few months. So we have an exciting couple of years ahead of us, and we're looking forward for all of your participation in those efforts.
All right, thank you. And Jim?
I apologize. I had to step out and move my car. Anyhow, hopefully I didn't miss this point, but do we have a swag or any kind of guess as to what the total cost is to make this happen?
Yeah, we did look at this again at a high level conceptual viewpoint and looking at all the different alternatives. And Valerie did mention that there was some also discussion with various peers across the country. So again, light rail transit's a significant investment. It can range anywhere from $50 to $80 million a mile. I think our range was 500 to 700 million roughly. But again, that was a high level concept. our real focus was just understanding what we've heard from and gathering input from the public and other stakeholders, understanding existing operating environment, what we could potentially improve upon within the existing right of way in terms of multimodal, and helping that craft this vision.
To me, I guess my comment is that that's not a significant number. I mean, if you think about it, 120 days ago or so, we came up with the concept of a $200 million bond issue just for workforce housing. And in 90 days, they raised $1 million to get the word out about it, and it passed here. And so I think there's definitely, if there's a strong push and so forth, there's definitely a way to get it done. I mean, I remember as a kid, not kid, well, 18, 20 or whatever, they talked about maglev and TGV, and it was going to be out on the west side of town and so forth. And that didn't happen. But here, Brightline's here. It's of course a much bigger undertaking than what we're talking about. But I don't think it's that hard to raise that money if they really truly want to push it forward, and time to act is now.
Well, to your point, these projects are also federally funded, right? So there will be an ask if and whatever does advance through the additional study. Typically in the transit world, they look at for some type of up to 50% federal funding, then a 25% state, then a 25 local. So when you start to break it down into the 50 and then the 25%, it's even less than that total. But to your point.
Thank you. I don't want to add any more comment to the comment fatigue, but I do remember that we had a high level conversations about a potential TOD at military, because the military Palmtran network itself is, there's really high ridership on there, and the land use surrounding that location is just there's a really big opportunity for Westlake around that area. Was that ruled out, or is that still being considered?
We just showed a snapshot in the interest of time, but if you, on the study website, all the dots that we showed for the stations were looked at for TOD. So there is that same snapshot analysis for those other stations, including military. I'll let JP who did the analysis.
And we can offline it, so you don't, for the sake of time, but.
The one thing I want to underscore on specifically the military trail site is I think it's the Cross Country Mall site that's on the southeast corner there, has such is underutilized, built, I think in the early 80s, maybe, if not a little bit before then. So it's actually not aligned with current stormwater regulations. So any kind of redevelopment that would happen there would have to come up to a lot of different kinds of codes. And part of the reason why it's not redeveloping is because of that. And so something like this ends up becoming a bit of a carrot that allows for that redevelopment to happen, that then allows for the kind of return on the land investment that we were showing, which then helps to kind of pay for the whole process. We did look at that in the other corners as well. And actually that also, I think, overlaps with the CRA district there. And we engaged with them and talked about what that would look like, as well as the sort of northern boundary along the south side of Okeechobee there. And so a lot of those conversations have already been happening. So there's a lot of synergy going on with those plans, as well as what we're proposing.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna end, and so happy holidays, everybody. We're moving on to administrative item. I don't believe that we have any, or do we?
There are administrative items, 4A through 4F, but there are no staff presentations unless requested by a committee member.
Okay. If we all can agree, I'd like to adjourn, and we'll see everybody next year on February 1st. Okay.